Treasure Hogs back again. I think you guys will enjoy this one. So we know there is still a lot of questions in the community about what was the first stanza all about. We've got these 4 lines in the poem that everybody's debated over and over about what do they actually mean. When Forrest has told us that the first clue is to begin it where warm waters halt. So if we begin it where warm waters halt, and he's told us unequivocally, I don't know if I said that word right, but without a doubt, that's the first clue. So why even have this first stanza, these 4 lines? What do they mean? And I will tell you, there is one reason beyond any doubt why that stanza exists. And we can prove it to you, and we will prove it to you in this video. Some people have said that the first stanza doesn't mean anything. There's of no value there. And that's a huge mistake, as we can see clearly here by Forrest's own comments. While Forrest admits that there are a few words in the poem that aren't useful in finding the treasure, that it is risky to discount any of them. And I want you to notice the word discount, which means to reduce the number. He's telling us you can't reduce the number of the words in the poem. It is risky to do so. Forrest admits that not all of the words in his poem are useful in finding the treasure, but you need the entire number of words that are in the poem. You can't discount any of the words. Most of you know that there are 166 words in the poem, but there are 25 words in the first stanza. So if you discount the first 25 words in the poem, all the words in the first stanza, you only have 141 words. And that's not what Forrest said. So let me take a couple of minutes here and explain why it's risky and why Forrest said you can't discount the number of the words in the poem. I've got on the screen here what is a very familiar comment to us. Forrest said to read the blogs for entertainment. In the poem, like you were going to put an X on the map. If you see a solve that does not have an X on the map, that's a huge red flag. That's a problem. Because Forrest told us to read his poem like we're going to put an X on the map, which is not easy to do. But remember, it took him 15 years to write this poem, and he managed to pull it off. Here's another similar comment that Forrest made. He said he declined their invitation to put an X on the map, but will admit that it's there in spirit. Here's another familiar comment that we've all seen, that a lot of us have missed the significance of. He said, when you read the poem, it looks just like simple words there. But Forrest said, but I guarantee you I worked on that thing. I felt like an architect. He didn't say writing that poem. He says, I felt like an architect drawing that poem. And I'll give you one more before we start making our point here. He says the treasure is out there waiting for the person who can make all the lines cross in the right spot. So we need lines. We need an X. We need to make all the lines cross in the right spot. So let me try to put this all together for you. And then for those of you who saw our video, X marks the spot, you'll recognize this part of the Google Earth shot we have here. If you've not seen that video, I encourage you to go to the Treasure Hog channel and watch that video, Forrest Fenn Treasure Found, X marks the spot. Because in that video, we explain how we drew these 2 lines, and they come from the last stanza. You need 2 lines. The first line was, if you'll remember, was from the 32 degrees. Your effort will be worth the cold. Your effort will be the value 32 degrees. And just as a quick reminder, here's the definition of worth. It's the equivalent value. So your effort will be the value of the cold, or the value 32 degrees. And Forrest has told us that every word was placed strategically, and you can't ignore any of the nouns in his poem. He's told us that he had to look up every one of those nouns. You can't ignore any of them. you need all 32 of them. And you have to understand the way the poem was written to understand which definition to use. You could look up words and they could be a verb, a noun, an adverb. They can be lots of different things. So you have to understand the context that it was used in the poem to be able to figure out what the 32 nouns are. We didn't really use this as justification for our solve, but I'll show you something here I thought was interesting. Do you know which scrapbook is missing? Go to Dale Neitzel's site and look up the scrapbooks, and guess what? There's not a scrapbook 32. And Dale has given a couple of conflicting answers as to why there isn't. So I don't know if that means anything or not. I just thought it was odd. So the first line of our X came from the value of the cold, which was confirmed by the 32 nouns. And remember, we wouldn't have 32 nouns without the first stanza. So now we need the second line of our X to make all the lines cross in the right spot. And if you'll remember from our solve video, that the final clue is if you are braving in the wood, I give you title to the gold. And I've put on the screen here just reminding you that a heading is very similar to a title. So that line would read, I give you heading to the gold. And as you remember from our solve video, the heading is the ecliptic, the apparent path of the sun as it moves through the constellations. And that heading from Cancer to Leo just happens to be 166 degrees. And we have 166 words in the poem. So we've done what Forrest said to do. We've read the poem like we're going to put an X on the map. And we've not discounted any of the words in the poem. And we've not ignored any of the nouns in the poem. So I hope you now see how important the first stanza really is, and how meaningful the words are when Forrest said you can't discount any of them. For without those 25 words in the first stanza, we wouldn't have 166 words in the poem, and we wouldn't have 32 nouns in the poem, and we wouldn't have the two lines that make up the X on the map that lead us straight to the gold that Forrest hid for us. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Until next time.